Welcome aboard the Pilot Money Guys podcast, where our mission is to help professional pilots build and protect wealth on their journey to financial freedom. This podcast is brought to you by Leading Edge Financial Planning.
Hello and welcome to Flight 130, Nolan 130 podcast. So we're cranking them out. We're still doing it after 5 years. We just had our 5-year anniversary. I'm Charlie Mattingly, your host, with my co-host today, Nolan Clark, CFP. Welcome, Nolan. How you doing today?
Thanks, Charlie. Doing great. Yeah, that is hard to believe. Episode 130.
I know.
Just keep a lot of good ones.
Yeah, no, that's right. A lot of interesting ones. I know. That's right. We think so. Some better than others, right? Some of the early ones were a little bit embarrassing at times, and they still may be. Who knows? But we just try to get information out there. In fact, Nolan, our mission is to deliver actionable ideas, simplify the complex, cut through financial noise, and help people build a mindset for financial and life success. Today, I think Nolan comes into the life success more than anything else because it's a fascinating interview with a good friend of mine and ours is Danielle Lewis, airline pilot, prior military, and she has an amazing story that you're going to love to hear. So stick with us on that. She has a nonprofit she calls Village Hope, and it's constantly in the works. It's not a finished project or product yet, but she is an amazing an individual that helps the unhoused community in downtown Atlanta. I mean, there's a lot of addiction, there's a lot of crime, and she's bold and courageous. Nolan is fascinating. She talks about why she got into that, tells some amazing stories that you don't want to miss. And so we'll talk more about that in a minute. But man, it was pretty neat to listen to. I really wasn't expecting that, Nolan, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you mentioned this maybe more on the life success side of things, but part of our planning process that we talk about, Charlie, is if you finding that purpose really puts that money to work, so to speak, or it makes it matter, right? When you have a purpose behind it. It is. When you hear about people like Danielle, it really inspires you to try, and I know for me at least, to try and find that.
I said that exact same thing. I said, you don't know it, but she's just trying to do the best she can and love on people where they're at, not be judgmental, which sometimes is hard, not to do that. But on her LinkedIn page is a quote from Churchill. It says, "It's not enough to have lived, we should be determined to live for something." And so I think that's meaningful to her. It's meaningful to me as well, just to have that purpose like you talked about. But Nolan, before we get into our interview with Danielle today, the markets have been really interesting to us this year. Now, we're going to talk about performance. We don't ever predict in performance, and we're not worried about that. But the point of the performance that we're seeing this year is that diversification, Nolan, is actually paying off now. And maybe even that started last year because the S&P 500 has kicked the butt of every other asset class for like 10 years now. But, and we sometimes question why own anything else. But Nolan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you said it. I mean, I just want our listeners to know we feel that sometimes too, right? I mean, we're looking at the markets and it can be painful when the S&P's crushing it, and we're getting the questions, but it is good to see diversification at work, right? And I think that's what you're getting at, is when you aren't a diversified investor to get the highest returns, right? I mean, that's always good, but also it's kind of protecting your downside as well, right? And so that's what we've seen at the start of 2026, is that when the S&P was down, that for our clients at least, and diversified investors, they weren't down as much, right? And now, and those things in their portfolio, such as small cap value, large value, things that have not been doing international, did really well last year, but just things that have been kind of drags maybe on the portfolio have been doing really well. And so I think the point in saying all that is that we don't know what's going to be the thing that performs well each year. Of course, we say that all the time. And so our goal is just to own the market, because if you own the market, then you're going to be a part of that growth, a part of the winners, all those things. But it's been a fascinating year. I mean, even with the war, right? It's who would have thought maybe that the market would react this way. I didn't.
I didn't either.
It's recovered well, and who knows what's ahead of us, right? We got to prepare for anything.
Yeah.
And I think that may be the biggest risk, right? Is this recency bias these past few years that, you probably look at your statements, the returns are great. And, the market has recovered quickly. And we just got to prepare ourselves that it's not always going to be like that. Right. And so we can't expect that. But what else do you think, Charlie?
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the recency bias. By the way, like the year-to-date emerging markets are almost 18%. Nolan, I'm looking at one of the investments we're familiar with, and small value is almost 15%. Large is about the same. S&P is not too shabby either. You're at 5.5% about as we're recording this. This is incredible. You know what I mean? It's just like, so we're, you nailed it. We don't expect those things to continue at this rate. It's natural for us to have a recession, have a market downturn. Those are going to happen. But the recency bias sometimes lulls us into investing in one asset class only. And lately, that's been the S&P 500, because it's done so well. Everybody's concentrated everything in the S&P. And there's other things out there that, will perform. But it's hard to have the discipline when for the last 10 years, the S&P has been the only game in town. In fact, Nolan, when you and I have said, "Hey, we're globally diversified investors," it's felt like kind of lame. Like, oh, that's dumb. Why would you do something like that? But again, so it takes discipline to stick with those things, but it does pay off. So we're seeing that, which is encouraging. But like you said, most importantly, hey, prepare for when it's not going so well, because that's just the natural part of the market and the economy. It's going to happen.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, if you're a diversified investor, you can at least feel confident that you should be prepared for those things that we're expecting, right? It's like we don't know when the next market downturn will be, but if you're diversified, you're at least doing what you can do.
Yeah, you got it. But well, Nolan, today's podcast with Danielle Lewis is, like I said, a fun one. We're going to talk about people like Father Greg Boyle that runs Homeboy Industries out in California. When I say Homeboy Industries, if you look at Father Greg Boyle, he's as white as can be with a white beard, bald head. So he looks anything but like a homeboy. And that's the beauty of it. He has taken in gang members out there, changed lives. Another book we talk about is Trust First with Bruce Deal. In fact, that book is amazing because it's probably in the very similar area that Danielle Lewis is operating in, downtown Atlanta and some of the more difficult areas of unhoused and addiction and things like that. So 2 parts. I think the podcast is kind of 2-part, Nolan, where she starts off with just a lot of the stories, including her own story and how she got into that, which is phenomenal. And then I kind of ask her late in the podcast, hey, how should people, we know a lot of generous people in the professional pilot airline community, very generous, very charitable. How can people be involved? And I'll be honest with you, Nolan, she's not afraid to step on some toes. And she said, hey, look, sometimes it's not enough just to go out in your own community. You got to get out into communities maybe that are underserved, maybe some communities that have never seen a successful airline pilot before. Go out and out of your comfort zone. And Nolan, sometimes it's like when we go hear a speech or we're sitting in church and somebody tells us something sometimes we don't want to hear. It's hard, but it certainly woke me up a little bit to like how to really help if we want to get out there and get our hands, dirty with help and giving and like you said earlier, having real purpose in your life. So get ready and hang on for the message.
Absolutely. I heard a quote once. I think it was the gospel can comfort the afflicted and afflict the comforted. So for me, sometimes for me, it's easy to get comfortable, and that messages like that are good though, right? To wake you up, and it doesn't. It's inspiring. So that's right. I love it.
So today will be like a workout. You go to the gym to cause a little pain, cause a little discomfort. That's how you get stronger. That's what today will be like. Especially when Danielle challenges us a little bit to get outside our comfort zone. So check it out. I think you'll enjoy it. And here we go. Well, Danielle, again, thanks for being with us today. We appreciate it. And, this is kind of a selfish interview too, because I saw your LinkedIn page a few years ago and I saw Village Hope and I was like, wow, this looks fascinating. And you're an airline pilot at in an airline we were both at. And I messaged you in LinkedIn and you never messaged me back. So that hurt a little bit. But
I'm sorry. You'll get over it.
I got over it. But we get to talk now because I was fascinated because some of your work you were doing And I was reading a book about some of the homelessness in downtown as well, probably about the same time. And so you're involved in that, and you do some work in that. So we'll talk about in a minute. But that's pretty fascinating, the work that you do. So I want to know selfishly why. What's the reasoning? And I love too some of the things that you've talked about as far as just living life with a purpose, and kind of what motivates you there as well a little bit, because you don't have to, right? I mean, airline pilots, you and I know a lot of the same people. You can kind of just have fun and vacation on the time off or spend time with friends, and you choose to do something a little different. So that's kind of interesting. But what do you think? I mean, where's the why come from? What's your why?
It wasn't a plan. I don't think it's kind of like, I mean, I'm by no means comparing myself to Moses, but it's like Moses when he's like, are you sure you want me? Or Noah with the ark, who had never seen water. So it truly fell into my lap. I was serving enchiladas with a church in the city of Atlanta, in the homeless community, in the unhoused community, excuse me. And we were out serving enchiladas, and we had a bunch of extra enchiladas and brownies. Just a little side note, the unhoused community in Atlanta was not really aware of what enchiladas were. I spent more time explaining what enchiladas were than I actually did anything else. And the pastor of this church is younger than me. His father founded a church here called the Dream Center. It's kind of an offshoot, I think, of the Dream Center in LA. And it's really cool because you go into their church, and it's so many churches. Martin Luther King would say that Sunday is the most segregated day in our country, which is true, right? So many churches, everybody looks the same social class, socioeconomic class, the same race. Well, this church was not that. And you walk in, and there's a drug dealer, there's someone who was in prostitution, there's a wealthy white man, there's a wealthy black man. It was very, very diverse church. And I think it's because of where it started in Atlanta and the outreach. And Tommy, the pastor, was like, he's like, I've seen for years that you have a gift with the unhoused community. That's your calling. And if you would have asked me, I would have said, no, my calling is children. I was a first tee coach in the first tee of Greater Atlanta, which really did serve the underserved community, which a lot of them don't, but that was the foundation. And that's what my passion was. I have all my friends are around that when I first moved to Atlanta in 2010. And I would have thought, no, that's it. These leftover enchiladas ended up going to a neighborhood where Village Hope started that day. And one of the guys who ran one of the jazz bars, lounges in the community kind of had his pulse on the whole neighborhood. And he let us use his space. And his name is Joe. And Joe let us use his space. And through that, it kind of gave me credibility. I actually hung out in that community. I had seen him around. I knew he was pretty involved. And it kind of gave me credibility quickly on the streets through him that, hey, maybe she's safe to talk to.
Wow.
And he did it in a challenging way, like, hey, if you think you can make a difference, come out here and make a difference. And here I am, this blonde hair, blue-eyed white woman in zone 6 of Atlanta, predominantly black. And he was right. Like, he's like, you can't come out here and save the block. And I can't.
Yeah.
But I kept showing up. And I remember thinking, I don't know how this is happening, but it was, hey, can you help this person? And shortly after this, a guy named Gary on the street got attacked and stabbed at the park. He was unhoused. He had a mental health disorder. Sweetest man on earth. And I had just handed Gary an umbrella. I would go out and buy like cheap umbrellas at TJ Maxx, Ross, wherever I would see them. I don't know how this started. And I would see I get 5 umbrellas for $20. And when it would rain, I would see people out there in the rain, and I would just stop, and whether it be at a bus stop or whatever, and hand out umbrellas. I have no idea how that started, but this day I handed Gary an umbrella. And shortly after, Gary had gotten stabbed. And I don't remember who told me that he had gotten stabbed, but it was during COVID, and Grady is our inner city hospital. Mm-hmm. So I walked in there and said, hey, I work for some of the churches in the community. I volunteer, and I'm here to see this guy who got stabbed. And I just walked in there like I owned the place, which probably comes from that confidence of all the years in the military and flying airplanes. I mean, Grady is where Spike Lee was born, and he talks about being a Grady baby. And they let me walk right in there like I belonged. Well, that's when I really realized, wow, I really do have access to neighborhoods, right, wrong, and different, or communities that other people wouldn't. Was able to get Gary help. And I have a picture, and he has like 15, 20 massive staples and 100 sutures all in his belly and all this. I mean, he was stabbed, cut up with a knife. And then from there, he went into community, and we never saw Gary on the streets again. He got on regular medication. He got his grandmother or his mother, I can't recall, would say he would go to the house, and when he wasn't on his medication, he was such a ticking time bomb, and how I can only imagine how much that hurt her. It might have been his mother. And now he has access to his family. Ironically enough, one of his nephews was a police officer I ended up finding out later who did it, but I also was like, if I give that information, I've now lost the trust from the community. So never gave the information, but was able to keep in touch and find out what, and I also did, it was all hearsay, right? I didn't really know, but was able to keep in touch and find out that Gary from that was able to get into aftercare, get into a home. And I thought, wow, there's really a need for people that will take the time or willing. And I couldn't get over the acceptance. And that's when I realized it kind of just, the nonprofit, it just started.
Wow.
So when Tommy said, hey, you're going to have a nonprofit, he wasn't wrong. And then it started because of COVID. Tommy had I wanted to just work with Tommy's church.
Yeah.
And Tommy's like, hey, I have all this food from all these schools that are shut down. They're giving us food. So I would cook the food or warm up the food. He'd give me some food. They cooked food. And then I would just start doing it to my own neighborhood. And that turned into people who are like, hey, I need an address to get an ID, because you can't have an ID, you can't get food stamps. If you don't have an ID, you can't get medication, you can't get housing, you can't give a driver's license. You have to have all these things and an address. So to get a driver's license, you have an address to send it to. So I would work with these different communities, and it turned into a full-blown nonprofit.
Oh, wow.
And then one day a guy named Charles came to me, and Charles was probably my age. And he came to me and he's like, hey, I want to get off the street. And I would see Charles get drunk, and his addiction was alcohol, and he would sleep on a park bench. Well, the same shop owner that kind of helped me in the community was like, he is my biggest nuisance. If you could get Charles help and get him away, we will all be grateful. Because he would get drunk and get obnoxious, like every one of us does when we drink too much.
Yeah.
And Charles, and I drastically failed Charles numerous times learning opportunity. And then I realized, wow, there's a lot of places that won't take you without an ID. Like the ID was a holdup. So I've got Charles into a horrible facility the first time that was free, that didn't require an ID. And within like 24 hours, he was back on the block drunk, and someone sent me a picture. I was actually at the food truck in Las Vegas. Someone sent me a picture of Charles with a beer in his hand. And I'm like, it's back. Man. I finally found a good place for Charles out of the state. He's got an ID, got on medication. He has all kinds. He would have seizures. So he fell off a ladder about 15, 20 years earlier working. He actually had a great work ethic, or does have a good work ethic. And he'd have seizures. And before I took him to the bus stop to get to where he was going, Charles and I were at Waffle House, because we're in Atlanta and that's where you go. And Charles told me his story. He started crying, and Charles is Black. And he's like, I've never had a white woman talk to me so kindly and not be scared of me. He's like, why are you talking to me? And I was like, I don't know. And I'm like, Charles, I never thought I'd be doing this, but I do know we're all made in the image of God. So it's definitely a faith-based. And Charles told me his story. His mother was really harsh. I usually would try to connect with the families. Yeah. And so I called his mother, and she was like, what do you want? What's your agenda? What's your angle? And I can't blame that. A lot of this underserved communities have that approach. Like, who are you? Why are you calling me? What do you mean you're an airline pilot? They all thought I was a cop forever. So one day I had to bring my ID out. Like, listen, I'm really an airline pilot. This is really me. And so over the years, I learned I wasn't. And he told me his story. Charles was like, my father is my grandfather. So Charles's mother was raped by her own father.
Oh, my Lord.
And that's what Charles is the product of. Yeah. And that's when I started realizing. I was reading a book by Father Boyles for Homeboy Industries out of LA. Yeah. And his focus was gangs in South Central LA in the 80s and 90s. He's like, no one goes to a gang because they're leaving a good situation. Wow. And he's telling all these stories of why they want to fit community. And the block where all these guys are, they're a community. There's Freeze, who to this day is still there. He has a finger that sticks out. Yeah. They were all petty drug dealers or came from the community. Some are just sit on the block and talk. But every one of them has a story, and that's their community. Charles's cousin, we called him Lil Bit, who has since passed from lung cancer. He's on one of the Village Hope YouTube videos. Little Bit was great. He would come out there on a bike with a cane, smoke. He had lung cancer and drink on the bench.
Oh my goodness!
But Little Bit, his mother lived around the corner. He had taken care of his mother. He worked at one point in his life until he got lung cancer. Wow. And that's what they would do. They would hang out in the block and talk about stories. A bunch of old men would in a coffee shop or whatever. I just got back from Spain, and there are parks everywhere, and there are old men just sitting around talking. Yeah. So a bunch of old dudes sitting around on a bench doesn't necessarily mean they're all up to no good.
Yeah, that'll be me one day. That'll be me one day, maybe. But
maybe.
But Danielle, that's incredible. I mean, there's tons of stuff. As you were going through that, I was just blown away. First of all, the book that I was reading when I contacted you and you rejected me on LinkedIn was Trust First by Bruce Deal. And you and I have talked about that since, but he started something in downtown Atlanta as well. And I only remember the name at this moment because that's exactly what you had to do. And for some reason, you were able to be comfortable going in and when maybe other people wouldn't be comfortable, in that environment. And that was incredible. That's exactly what earned you their trust and an ability to help them. And then they started calling you. I mean, that's incredible the way that all progressed, right? I mean, it's amazing. And if you could comment too, like I just got that book that you just alluded to. What is it? Homeboy Industries?
Yeah, Tattoos on the Heart.
Tattoos.
It's a book called Tattoos on the Heart.
That's it. Yeah, we just got that.
Fantastic.
My wife is reading it now. I'll read it after her. But so you talked a little bit too about, your faith is a big part of that. And it sounded like you had a boldness to go in there. Maybe it was from your faith, maybe it was from where you grew up or something. But man, that's incredible how that is what allowed you to earn that trust as well. But what do you think? I mean, where did that come from?
So I have a brother that's a meth addict, and he relapsed after it's either 9 or 11, 12 years, but he's been on and off drugs his whole life. He was a half brother, so he didn't grow up in the same home.
Yeah.
I have other siblings that are alcoholics, and then my father was an alcoholic. Yeah. So my father was a functioning alcoholic, but yet he was an absent father. So, and they're still alive. So, I mean, I think people they fight their diseases and do the best they can. But being around the brokenness, I was always afraid to be an addict. And then where I grew up in high school, late middle school, 8th grade, we moved out into the burbs. And it was a culture shock for me. I really thought majority of the world was Black and Hispanic. We moved a lot, but most of my communities were pretty diverse. And then I moved to the suburbs where the only people of color were like the Dallas Cowboy coaches' kids. And we were living on the poor block where the teachers lived. And I'm like, what just happened? So my cool clothes and my cool music taste did not fit in at all. Like I never went to prom or homecoming. I was like everybody's homegirl playing basketball. And then I only went to 3 years of high school. I got out. I'm like, I don't belong here. This is bad. Mm-hmm. Wasn't having the best childhood situation. But I think as an adult, I think there's that saying, there's purpose in the pain. Yeah. And where again, I would have thought kids and animals like me. So I would have thought kids were my calling. But I realized in hindsight, realizing that people who are broken in their pain, it comes from a place. Like I look at my father and his alcoholism, and he had an absent father, and it was hereditary, and that's a disease you don't have a control of. And I just kind of looked at that and thought, and my brother who's a meth addict, again, it's a disease, and he has a great heart. And I've heard the stories of things, him living in cars and things he's gone through, and he's probably the nicest of all my siblings and the sweetest heart, but just had the worst disease and the worst drug and all the side effects of that. So I think it kind of helps you stop and go, this whole time I was being prepared to kind of have some compassion and grace for people who struggle with addiction. And I was always so afraid to drink because of it. I don't have that addicted gene, but I see how controlling it can be and how good people have bad habits or bad diseases, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing because it feels like it could be any of us too that goes down a path. You know what I mean?
100%.
And you may have been more likely, you were definitely more likely than me to go down that path because I wasn't surrounded by it, I would think. Of course, nobody really knows why sometimes we get on these paths, but it could have been me just as well. I mean, I was in college and did all the normal college stuff, and some of my buddies went down the path. But that's incredible that, again, you could see through that, and I could see where some of your background maybe gave you that insight. But still, why do you think that you were able to take a different path again?
I think I wasn't taking a different path. I made a lot of bad choices. There was a lot of shady stuff I did about the people I was surrounded by in high school. And I think that's also when I was like, I need to get out of here. Mm-hmm. One of the guys that I was friends with, he had a full wrestling scholarship. He was older than me at an HBCU, a historically Black college and university up in the Baltimore area. And then I believe he got one over to Oklahoma. I forget the order, but he ended up getting arrested and losing that scholarship. Oh, man. And one of the other guys went to jail for 10 years, he was playing football. And I realized, wait a minute, this could really change my career path. And that's when like my whole life could change. And I've gotten away with a lot more than these guys have. And I was probably more the ringleader than they were. And this is back in beeper days and all this stupid stuff. So that's when I realized I needed to stop. And I almost immediately went and enlisted in the Air Force, barely I smoked a lot of weed then. I wasn't an addict. I was afraid to do drugs, but I wasn't afraid to smoke weed. And I was honest. So like, yep, smoked weed, barely passed a test, had horrible grades in school, not even sure how I got out of high school. And I went and enlisted in the Air Force, and they took me.
Wow.
Yeah. And then about that time is when I'm like, maybe I want to be a pilot. And I had at that time maybe been on an airplane once or twice ever in my whole life. And it was through a church trip that I was probably high on that one too, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's incredible. It's just fascinating to me how life, sometimes we're just a little bit lucky. Like you said, maybe there was the privilege
100%.
there in those situations, but there's some luck involved too. And man alive, it's incredible the path that your life has taken and the experiences you've had, and you're doing some amazing things, which is mind blowing to most of us. My mind is still blown that you were able to get in the Air Force. You decided to become a pilot, and here you are. But
so it was mine.
No, I'm kind of like, how does this happen? But clearly there was some moments or some people along the way, or like I said, maybe your faith or some randomness, I don't know, that kind of just
all of that
steered you.
All of that.
Wow.
It's funny. I just had lunch today with a friend of mine. He was one of the first people I knew here in Atlanta. But when I got hired at the airline in 2010, I got hired May 3rd. And like almost right away, I went to the LA Fitness right by my hotel, and they gave you a free personal trainer. And the personal trainer was a guy named Aaron, Ace. He goes by Ace. Yeah. He got out of prison on May 10th. So I got hired at May 3rd. May 10th, Ace gets out of prison. He, while in prison, got his personal training certificate and is now working at LA Fitness. And he became one of my first friends. And to this day, we just had lunch. To this day, we're great friends. He's from Pittsburgh. He did 15 years in prison. I'm 1 year older than him. So do the math on that. I was 32. He got out of prison after 15 years and had been in multiple times and took a plea deal that kept him from getting out. If he had not taken that plea deal, right, and he went out, he's very big on that. But if he had not taken that plea deal, he would have gotten out next year. So we've stayed friends, and he came out and started a 6-figure business almost right away. Now has multiple properties, Airbnb. And he talks about, we were just talking about all the times people were put in his path to make him, like, he could have gone back into the drug game. He could have gone back into all the stuff. And that's what he grew up in. His dad, his brother, everybody he grew up with was in gangs and drugs massively, and he got away. And we laugh. I think that sometimes when you're doing these criminal activities, it gives you a hustle and a sense of how to work hard, how to make ends meet. But you also are just surviving from what you know. Like I grew up in a family where there wasn't money and there weren't things available. And we had running water and electricity, but we didn't have toilet paper at times. That's my massive, there were times where I'm like, gosh, we've eaten CC $7.99 pizza for 4 days in a row, or boiled noodles. And, creditors are calling and cars are being repossessed. And it creates this hustle in you where you want to take care of the family. And Ace and I were just laughing about that at lunch and how different his life was. He's married now with children, owns multiple properties, and goes into the prisons and talks to the young guys there. And he's like, you look at him now and be like, what do you mean you're a felon and you spent 15 years in prison? Yeah. But how many people would see that and be like, oh, you can't be friends with that? And he's been at all my Christmas parties. We've been friends for years. I've met all the women he's dated and his wife and know his children and everything else.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
But there's something that drive. And then it's something happening, him going to jail, me going to the Air Force, that kind of knocks you out of this. And it's that survival mode. And the military for me made sense because my dad was in Vietnam. My brother, who was a meth addict, he went to the military after many drug issues. And he only spent a few years, but he was that old fashioned, go in the military or go to jail. And he went into the Marine Corps. Wow. And was a Marine Corps cop for a few years, but then there were some side effects from all the years of drugs that he eventually got out on a medical discharge. Yeah. But it made me realize that might be the only option.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I'm just thinking of all the things you talked about there. I did another podcast. We call it Flight 118. Good friend of mine now at our church as well. He was on our podcast and was an addict as well. Had drug addiction, served time in prison. But if you met him now, you would never ever know that. Very successful business guy now. Great father, husband, etc. He's a great friend. Again, great podcast as well. But it is amazing because once you've gone through stuff that you've been through, that he went through. I know you weren't in jail or prison or whatever, but you went through some stuff as well. But it's almost as if I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I mean, you've kind of been through it. And now like some of the stuff that normal people are afraid of, like, let's say losing money, probably doesn't faze you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, not at all. It's funny. I used to be motivated when I was younger by not being poor. I wanted to always have toilet paper. If you come to any of my houses now, I have a couple properties. They all have plenty of toilet paper, like an excessive amount of toilet paper. And, but that was like, that's my childhood trauma is I don't like pasta, boiled pasta, and I don't want to run out of toilet paper. God, that was horrible. And I would steal toilet paper. I worked at McDonald's. I would steal toilet paper from McDonald's and big things of napkins. And I don't ever want to use napkins as toilet paper again either.
Yes.
So, and I think McDonald's would forgive me if they knew that. But so I'm not afraid of losing it all because I don't need a lot to be happy. I realize it's not. And, but yeah, I was used to be motivated by not being poor. And now I realize money is not everything.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating.
And making money is easy. It's not that hard either.
Yeah. And you can put it in its right perspective and, enjoy it. It's a blessing and it's good. And you can help other people with it like you're doing. And you can buy toilet paper. And so that's kind of nice too. And hopefully COVID wasn't too bad for you in that regard because there was nobody.
Thank God I was stocked up already. It's just me. I was like, I got plenty.
So we should have come to you during that time, maybe.
I had no problem.
Excellent. But well, what about, I don't know how active you are in it right now, because I know you talked about this, you and I talked earlier, but Village Hope, what was it, is it, and how did that start? What was your intent there?
So I didn't want a nonprofit. I remember praying over and being like, God, I don't want this. Again, exactly how Noah with the ark and Moses was like, are you sure you want me with my talk funny, my speech impediment to go talk to the Pharaoh, Yeah. Again, I'm not comparing myself to them, but it was so clear. I would literally pray, God, is this what you want me to do?
Yeah.
And then my phone would ring and it'd be a woman who just got beat up or needed to get off the streets and would be calling, can you come get me? And I lived like a mile from where it kind of started. And one of the first ladies, she's gone missing. We think she's probably passed. One of the first ladies I worked with was probably one of the sweetest souls I've ever met too, and helped her get off the street. I actually didn't help her, someone else did, but I drove her to the bus station through the church. And it started being once one person trusts you, they all trust you. Mm-hmm. So people I thought would never come to me and talk to me were like, hey, can you help me? And help looks different with everyone. So through that, COVID's going on and it's becoming a job. And there was a lot of things that were hard. There's a lot of times I didn't want to do it, but it was some things that happened in my life in 2018 or so. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be more obedient. And I'm retired from the military now. I have the time. Yes, it's hard when we're gone in the airline industry, but we have so much free time. And that obedience, I don't know if I'll ever pray that again. Sorry, Lord. But that was, it was overwhelming at times and it was hard. And what I realized, again, from that book, Tattoos on the Heart, is everybody truly is there for a reason. Like my childhood wasn't great, but mine was a lot better than a lot of people. And the luxuries that I have, just people that I'm working with, these are people that are friends. They become friends over time. I know their families, I know their children, I know their story, that they can never dream of having the luxuries that I have. And it makes it easy to be generous. I went to Bob Goff's, one of his Dream Big seminars for my birthday. It was someone mentioned it. A friend of mine out of LA mentioned it, and she's a pastor. She works a lot with the undocumented community. And she was like, hey, he's fantastic. And I'd heard Bob Goff speak. So I went out there during COVID. There was maybe 10 or 11 people there. And Bob Goff is a nonprofit attorney by trade. He has since retired, but that's what he was a nonprofit attorney in his career. And he talks about it in all of his books and his speaks. And he was asking everybody what their dream was. And I'm like, I think my dream, whether I want it or not, is to make Village Hope a real nonprofit. And so when I was done, he came by and he's like, hey, I'll help you do your nonprofit and help you figure it out. I can't do it for you. I'm not an attorney anymore, but I can tell you exactly what you need to do. And I'll call you in a month from today and we'll see where you are and what else you need. And here's how to get started. And so he's like, I believe in what you're doing. So he went to certain people here. There weren't many of us. So we were all eating dinner, breakfast, lunch. And then another lady who came from crazy wealth, her husband was an orthodontist and owned like 100 and something orthodontic clinics in California, came and gave me a check. And I'm like, well, I guess I have a nonprofit. And a month later, the paperwork submitted. He looked at it, and it's a full blown. So I mean, truly, I went back to Tommy, and I talk to Tommy still all the time, and I'm like, Tommy, you told me this was going to happen. It's your fault. But clearly, he was right when he said, I see this coming into your life, and I never in my wildest dreams wanted a nonprofit. And the vision's changed a lot. The vision, I've had a lot of visions with it. There's a YouTube video out there, villagehope.org. There's a movie theater that I would love to restore. It's like $1.5 million plus project. But if it became a nonprofit, it would truly all the events, all the resources could go back into the community. And I really wanted it to happen, but I realized I needed a whole staff. I was just about to upgrade to captain at the time. People needed to be able to step up. And people say they want to help, but they don't always want to help in the way that you need the help. So I've kind of left that to God. Like, God, if you want this to happen, the nonprofit's still going. I just got off the phone after my lunch with Ace, with one of my guys I call Sheriff, who's never had family. And I sent him a box of chips and paint, and he's out making arrows with leaves and sticks at this community he lives in North Carolina. So everybody has a story, you know. And Sheriff's one that has touched my heart the most. Wow. And they're all like, they're really, really deep, amazing stories. But that's how it came about. Like, someone spoke it on my life. I just let it go in one ear at the other ear. Yeah. Within 6 months, it's happening. And I'm like, gee, thanks. And really never really thought about that until later on.
Oh, that's incredible.
And,
wow. So what would this building become? Just a place for people to like have community. It kind of reminds me, like you said, of the Dream Center in LA. I think that's what you were talking about, right?
Yeah. So my hope was it's an event space. It could be an event space. There's jazz concerts in the community. It could be used like my best friend's sister is an artist. She works at the King Center and teaches elderlies how to do art. Like, I could give that to her place to do art clinics. I could have kids come after school and do tutoring. There's 1 million nonprofits that could use it for free during the week. And then, like, if you want to have a wedding, it could be a great wedding venue. Oh, nice. And it's in a super popular neighborhood with parking right where I also work with the unhoused community. And it could bring in anywhere from 1 to 1.5 million. But it would take a whole team. It would take $1.5 million. So that was my vision, is to make, hey, if you want to have a wedding here, we ask for a $25,000 donation, which is a very normal wedding fee. Sure. And that all goes straight to the nonprofit. I've never taken a penny. I have a salary. I don't need the money. But eventually, if I were to do something like that, I would need a staff. And then it would give a place for the unhoused to get their mail, to get their food stamps, to get their IDs, to take a shower, to do laundry. Because at the end of the day, there's certain people who are never going to want to get off the street. And that is not my place to decide who I do and don't help. And that, I think, is a hard time. You'll hear people say, I volunteered at Christmas, or, this one holiday at this food shelter. And this guy was upset because he didn't want his mashed potatoes touching his peas, or he wanted chicken and not beef. And I'm like, but they're human. Why can't they have a preference? Like, why do we care? Wow. You're there to serve them in whatever capacity they need. I'm not just helping people get off the street or just helping them stop using drugs. I'm showing up where they are in whatever they need. And sometimes that's just someone to talk to. Yeah. And that's fine.
Treating them like another human being, like you talked about earlier. And that's kind of your gift, is to see right through the outward appearance or circumstances, which, a lot of us can't do. We've just, I don't know why, but that's incredible. That you have that gift as well. But it's amazing. On that note, because you alluded to it earlier, and I want to just stress how important it is, because you told me this before the podcast. Like, if a person doesn't have an address, they got nothing, right? Because you talked about that right when we started. So that's the value, a huge value of Village Hope and people having addresses or a mailbox or whatever it might be, because that opens the door. Because it seems like there's lots of services out there to help, but they cannot help without an address, I guess. Is that kind of the way it works?
Yeah, it's true. And there are a lot of services to help, but there's an address. An ID is the start. And to have an ID, you need an address. To get food stamps, you need an address. And then when you're homeless, stuff gets stolen. So sometimes an ID is hard to keep. Yeah. Again, if I had a building or a place, I would have kept the IDs in there or whatever they needed. There are a lot of services, but our systems are also really broken. I won't say its name. There's a rehab facility that's just blown up here in Atlanta. And I've seen a lot of people there. They have what they call scholarship beds. Apparently, one of the Atlanta sport team owners went there. And it's a faith-based program, which I do find the faith-based programs have a higher rate of success than the non-faith-based, because they're not just motivated by money, is what I've learned. And of course, the faith means a lot to me. But sometimes I'll just send them wherever someone will take them.
Yeah.
And there are organizations that will provide pseudo insurance for the unhoused community that are fantastic. But again, you got to have an ID and you got to have an address, and it can't all be my address. Is what I've learned, and my phone number. But what I have found as organizations got bigger, they still are like, oh, we only have so many scholarship beds and we only have this. And it just drives me nuts, because if there's a woman that is willing to get off the street at 9:00 on a Friday night, that's when she needs to get off the street. That opportunity may not come again. And I've seen it. I've seen people that are willing right then, and then I've never found them again, or they've died before the opportunity comes because someone doesn't answer the phones. Someone's not getting paid at that hour. Yeah. And that's the heart. There's a lot of centers, but there's a lot of salaries that are being paid to a lot of those places. So how much of that money actually gets to the people? And what I've learned with Village Hope is I could do a lot without ever needing the money. I've tried to get away. If I can't get the theater and do that whole project, I've tried to stay away from the money's part so I could really focus on just loving the people. And I'd rather pay out of my own pocket if it's money's involved, or send the money to a church that I could work with, like the one Tommy's at, and then have them put the money forth if I needed it. I got enough resources now because I don't want to have to pay someone a salary and take away from the people.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah, that's incredible. It's just amazing. Like, it's just, for me, I'm just so unaware of the world. I'm just sheltered, quite frankly. You know what I mean? Just we serve in other ways, but the world you're talking about is very foreign to me. I've just never been around it much. But why do we what's wrong with saying homeless versus unhoused? I'm totally ignorant on that.
It's politically correct, I think. Now, I don't really know what it derived from, but the unhoused community is, I think, more than just saying homeless. And that's just kind of what it turned into. I don't really get involved in a lot of it. I just try to be respectful to it.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then again, some people, it's a choice. They're unhoused, but they have a community. You know, every unhoused person I know has a community. And when there's a gentleman that owned a consignment shop who passed away this week last year. And Michael and his husband did so much for the unhoused community. So here are two gay white men working with predominantly Black unhoused community. They've been in the same building for 28 years in a consignment shop that was amazing. And Michael got cancer. I saw him right before Christmas, and he died within a few months. And it was obvious he had something bad. He was sick, throwing up. He finally went to the doctor. Didn't have great insurance. Even though he had a business, it still wasn't great insurance, which is something that's a majority of Americans are facing. And it's so hard for us to remember that in our job with amazing insurance and amazing income. We're really not the norm. Right. And Michael, right before he died, we're sitting there. He wasn't a believer. And he's like, it's so shameful that you helped all these people and so many of them have relapsed. Not all of them have, but a lot of them do. And sometimes recovery is just like my brother. He was clean for 9 or 11, 14. I can't remember how long he was clean before he relapsed again, but he's clean again. Yeah. And I looked at him and I said, but Michael, you helped him too. And he goes, but look how many of them are still back out here. I'm like, but they know a gay white dude that loved them in the way they were. You always helped wrap bandages. You always give them a bathroom, a shower. Y'all brought birthday gifts and cakes. You helped the community. Yeah. So no, it wasn't wasted. You still loved someone that didn't look or believe or think or act or anything like you. And you might be the only gay white dude they've ever met in their whole life. Yeah. And when we all get into heaven, my hope is that we're sitting on a park bench with no cancer, no drug addiction, no poorness. And we're all sitting there just laughing and loving each other. So no, you made a huge difference. It's not about getting someone clean. It's not about what the end goal is. It's about just continually showing up where they are and loving them how they are.
You're right. Man, that's powerful, Danielle, because if you had this grandiose vision or goal of like, I'm getting people off the street, I think you'd be
terrible.
You'd be discouraged. You wouldn't be able to maintain that. You'd be burnt out. You'd be frustrated. It's cynical. And so that's amazing the way you put that, because sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves. It's not our responsibility to do that. Like you said, just show up and love them the best you can, which is incredible. But I know we're coming up on our time here, and we'll just wrap it up in the next couple of minutes. But it's funny, you were talking about Bob Goff. I mean, that guy is incredible. He's got a bunch of books out there, but the stuff he has done is absolutely borderline crazy, amazing crazy. But he has books, what The Love Does. I've read that one, and Everybody Always.
Dream Big.
I've not read that one. I'm sure that one's crazy. I mean, just the stuff in his other books is amazing.
Yeah. No, his stuff is good. And he does like a writer's workshop.
I would love to write a book about all the different people I've met in the community, but then that takes effort and time, and I hate writing. But he does a writer's workshop, and I thought, man, I need to find someone that will write a book, and I could just tell all these stories too, because kind of like tattoos in the heart, the stories. I think people need to hear the stories, and the stories matter. There's so many. Sheriff, who I was just talking to, I call him Sheriff because he wears a sheriff's badge. And he used to patrol traffic and blow whistles and parking and clean, and the news did a whole story on him. But then he got sent to prison for 10 years for the most ridiculous thing in the world, and he didn't have an addiction. Sheriff was the one that changed my life and so many lives the most, and he grew up in the system. He's 62 or 63 now. And he lives in a nursing home outside of Charlotte. And Sheriff was the one that made me really realize you can't just help these people. You got to help all the people.
Wow.
And then there's Ronika, whose mother was decapitated in front of her when she was 13. Her mother was a prostitute, drug addict. Ronika is a prostitute, drug addict. And now she's not prostituting. She has numerous children. But she's also insanely talented and has a great imagination and could write anything. And people, their trauma, you are where your trauma happens. So they say that you always return to that age. So her trauma was 13 when she had to start taking care of her siblings. And everybody has a story, like Charles's father being his grandfather. And his mother was always so bitter towards him because he was a product of rape by her own father. And the stories... Ben is one of my favorite people on the street. He's been in and out of recovery a million times. Wow. But Ben is in the closet. He prefers men. He's gay, but yet he realizes when he gets sober, he has to face that reality, and he never does. Oh, wow. And but he's so sweet. He fixes all the cars in the community, and he can fix anything. So everybody has this amazing story, but they're overlooked so easily because they don't look like you and I or have the financial support that you and I have. And that's unfortunate.
It is. And in the physical location, it's just that's not somewhere that I go, and whether on purpose or not, it's, you know what I mean? I'm just not there, but anyway, it's just incredible. But what do you think, Danielle? I mean, how do people, we know a lot of people, you and I know a lot of people, airline folks that have great incomes. They're good-hearted people. They're very generous. A lot of the ones that I know. How do you think somebody could help in some of these ways? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think that's prayer, honestly. And for those who don't believe, I'm still going to say pray. Yeah. But I think that we do adopt a pilot at the airline, which I have a love-hate thing for, and I know it does good things, but I'm going to be critical of it. But so hear me out for those of you who are listening, and listen to the end. The adopt a pilot. I see pilots that do adopt a pilot, and guess where 90% of the pilots do their adopt a pilot? What school do you think they go to?
Their kids' school, probably.
So if you go to Atlanta, where I am, a lot of our pilots live in Alpharetta and Peachtree City, affluent, white, middle to upper class communities. Yeah. If you're in Dallas, it's Frisco, Coppell, affluent, white, upper class communities where all the pilots live. So how many pilots do you think are in that school? How many pilot kids are in that school or have been? So that's a prime example of get out into the underserved communities where people don't look like you, don't have the financial support, where pilots aren't. A good friend of mine is a middle school teacher here at King Memorial, one of the Title X schools. And I'm always like, let me know how I can show up, and she doesn't utilize that enough. But I want kids to see that all pilots aren't white, scary men. Because when you come from an underserved brown community, sometimes the representation of a white man is not positive. And that's hard for one of the churches I'm involved with in the community. The pastor is pretty well known. He got a lot of backlash he's 66 years old right now. And during George Floyd, he came out and said, if you were a black man, my age, when I was born, you were not born into the same rights. They were still segregated bathrooms. We have a privilege as white people. And that really did not go over well in the biggest church in Atlanta, where a lot of powerful, affluent white men went. But I would just say, soften your heart a little bit, and understand that there's generations and generations of challenges to maybe if you are going to serve as a pilot in that capacity, go show a little brown kid what that looks like, or a kid in an underserved community that's white, whatever's available to you. Still only 16% of our population is black, 45% is Hispanic. So whatever that looks like, go show someone that doesn't have the same socioeconomic class as you do
what that they can be, like someone like me. When I told my mother I wanted to be a pilot and no one went to college in our family and I barely got through high school, she was like, you need to set your goals more realistically. Did she think I was a dumb or no? She just, in her mind, the way she grew up, she could not see someone being a pilot. That was not obtainable. I had a young Black woman yesterday who was probably in her early 30s. She's like, oh my God, I've never seen a woman pilot. And that tells me the environment she's around. And that's just, it's so heartbreaking because not only are women pilots, there's Black women that are pilots now, but we're still not the minority or even more than 10 or 15%. I think we're still under 10% in the industry. And to be just a little more sensitive to that, if you want to get involved in what you know as a pilot and that skill, maybe don't go to your kid's school or do your kid's school and then go somewhere else and give that skill to a community that would never have access to pilots.
Yeah, that's a good one. It kind of makes me think like, you know, we could give our money and that's always great to do. A lot of organizations really need that. But what you're saying, additionally, step out of your comfort zone a little bit, you know, and think a little differently. Like sometimes that thought just never crossed my mind. I mean, and so that's really good. Just kind of think differently. And so I think that's enough too, to add that on to being generous is pretty powerful combination as well. But
and then if you see an unhoused person on the street asking for money, I will discourage every day, all day that that's not always popular because there are women that have children that need hotel rooms or whatnot. But a lot of times they're being trafficking. If you see a woman unhoused, there is some form of trafficking happening, whether it's in the sense of she is being protected from not being raped by other men, but in exchange, she needs to go beg to get money for whatever addiction it is. Or she has children, they may not even be her children, and there's a man watching somewhere for them to ultimately get a hotel room for that night. I would encourage things like, you know, water bottles, socks are always huge. Not even food cards. I'll hear people say about food cards. They turn around and sell those. Get food. The unhoused community never has a hard time getting food because people will give. If I leave a restaurant here, I'll try to get leftovers from the table that are decent, not the crummy leftovers that have been picked through, but decent leftovers, or just order a side meal and give it to the homeless person that I saw standing outside. There's a million ways you can help with your money without giving money that is probably going to be used for everything, for drugs, or maybe to give to a man that's controlling them.
Wow. Yeah, that's good advice because I don't know how to give and help somebody in the right way when I see that. So that's good to know. But Danielle, what do you think? Like as we wrap up here, as you look into the future, you know, I'm older than you. I'll just say that. So I'll start to think about, man, what about when I'm really old and my grandkids or somebody comes up and says, hey, how did you do? Did you do all the things you wanted to do? You know, any regrets? And what do you hope that you can kind of say in that situation? Yeah, I did the best I could, but what would you add to that? Any thoughts on that?
I don't know. You know, I knew you were going to ask that question. And I think it comes back to, I don't think we've ever stopped, right? I don't know where everything kind of goes back to my basic beliefs of Christianity. And nowhere does it ever talk about retirement in the Bible. In fact, you know, I don't know. Noah and Moses to me were old men with white beards. I have no idea what they really were, but nowhere does it talk about retirement. So I think it's how just showing up continually. I hope in the end, as much as I laugh and say I'm never going to ask God how he wants me to show up again, because the Village Hope was not what I was planning on at all. I just hope that I continue to show up and I continue to see him where he wants me to. And my biggest hope is that the sheriffs and the Ronikas and the Sins and the Bens and the Freezes and all those people, that we are all sitting on a bench with my pilot buddies and the people I served in, you know, other communities in Africa and the Middle East and South America with, and we're all laughing and not judging or divided. You know, that we're all just enjoying life without pain and without racism, without social classes, you know, with all the divisions. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. That's good. So I love it because it's very relationship. It's very just loving on people. And that's awesome. It keeps 100%. It authentic and simple, although it's not easy sometimes, but the formula at least is simple, right? So that's awesome. But Danielle, what do you think? Anything else before I let you go? Anything that I didn't ask that I should have that you're thinking about as far as just experiences?
I can't think of anything. I would just say, I'm guessing that majority of the audience is white, and or white men that are airline pilots, and I'm probably made a lot of them mad. But I would say, and a lot of us are Christians, to pray about what I've said and maybe change. I hang out with people that are prostitutes and drug dealers and drug addicts in the street a lot. So I don't always come with the best wording, but to maybe pray that it's not as black and white as it seems. Nothing is. Kind of like when you have an airplane emergency, we get taught A plus B equals C, but all the ones we learned from are because they weren't as black and white as we thought they were. And that we are all made in the image of God. We all try for the same thing, acceptance, love. We lost it all today, but I was happy in a tent with people I loved around me. That's really all that matters, without pain, without cancer, without whatever. And for the target audience, I hope I didn't anger you and totally turn you off, but to maybe hear what I'm saying and realize it's coming from not that your world of safety and comfort is wrong. It's absolutely not, but to be maybe more sensitive to a world that looks different than yours. And, when I was in upgrade training, one of the guys was very insensitive. I have a tattoo that I never thought I would have that says, send me, I will go. It's a gospel song based on Isaiah 6:7 or 6:8. That's based like, here I am, send me. And then after people asked about it and I mentioned the nonprofit, most people were pretty open, like asking questions. And he's like, marijuana is just a gateway drug. And that was his input on that. And I'm like, wow, that's what you got from that. So I would say I apologize for all my lack of decorum and there's a reason I didn't become a general in the military, but to maybe be more sensitive and realize that we all really are the same. No matter what we look like, what we do, what our income is, and to maybe be more sensitive to that. Yeah,
you nailed it. And it's just, for me, it's just thinking differently, being more aware. And sometimes we get busy. We get wrapped up in our own little worlds, and there's nothing wrong with paying attention to that as well, of course. But nonetheless, thinking outside of what is normal to us sometimes takes a little effort and creativity. So I appreciate your message today, Danielle. Thanks for taking the time. It was awesome, and thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it, and can't wait to talk to you again soon.
All right, we'll see you. Have a good day.
Hello, Pilot Podcast family. Charlie here. I just wanted to share with you something we've just recently developed. In the show notes, you're going to see the Pilot Wealth Index. We want you to check it out. Give it a shot. It's a quiz, a short questionnaire that allows you to understand, are you on track? We have a lot of people that say, hey, we just want to know if we're on track. Are we where we should be at this stage of our flying career, airline career, whatever it might be? How am I doing? Am I close to my peer group? Am I behind? Am I ahead? We've developed some questions, some metrics that we think if you go through this and check it out, answer the questions, you will have a very good idea of where you stand. We developed the questions that give an indication of, are you doing the right things you need to do to be prepared for an eventual retirement, and that one that can be profitable for you. So check it out in the show notes, the Leading Edge Pilot Wealth Index. We hope you give it a shot. If you have any questions at all, reach out. Happy to help. Charlie at leadingedgeplanning.com. Again, that's Charlie at leadingedgeplanning.com. You can call or text me on my cell, 865-328-4969. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Pilot Money Guys podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes or wherever you listen. We are grateful for your reviews because they encourage others to listen in. Visit leadingedgeplanning.com to learn more and subscribe to our newsletter. Leading Edge Financial Planning, LLC, LEFP, is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where LEFP and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For additional information, please visit our website at www.leadingedgeplanning.com. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, and it should not be relied on as such. It should not be considered a solicitation to buy or an offer to sell a security. It does not take into account any investor's particular investment objectives, strategies, tax status, or investment horizon. You should consult your attorney or tax advisor. The views expressed in this commentary are subject to change based on market and other conditions. These documents may contain certain statements that may be deemed forward-looking statements. Please note that any such statements are not guarantees of any future performance, and actual results or developments may differ materially from those projected. Any projections, market outlooks, or estimates are based upon certain assumptions and should not be construed as indicative of actual events that will occur. All information has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but its accuracy is not guaranteed. There is no representation or warranty as to the current accuracy, reliability, or completeness of, nor liability for, decisions based on such information, and it should not be relied on as such.